Steven, welcome to Four Lads podcast. It was brilliant of you to give up your time to join us today and talk about Rangers. This is, I think, if memory serves me right, this is the first time you've ever done a deep dive into your Rangers career.
Yeah, it probably is. And on a few occasions at a certain few clubs that this is around about the time I have, because when I was a player I was always much, right, we've done that, we need to move on to the next. I think that's the mentality of being a Rangers player, and that's kind of how I've been. So now is a good time that I reflect.
So yeah, it's really nice that you've chosen me to do this. I doorstepped you. I wrote a couple of weeks ago, so you had no choice really. But let's talk about, if we journey back to 2007. You signed 5 minutes before the window closed, and late in August, £1.9 million for Kilmarnock. It was a much hyped transfer because you were the big thing, and there would have been a lot of chasing from Rangers in that month. How did it finally feel to sign for Rangers?
It was amazing, but I think the lead up to it was there was so many different emotions, because it was something that, as you said, it probably started. I scored for Kilmarnock a 1-0 win at Ibrox in the April-May time, and it had been grown from that point. There was a bit of chat about it, and you go through summer and you think, right, okay, this is going to happen, and then before you know it, you're back pre-season, and I'm at Kilmarnock, and having no real understanding of how it all worked. You're expecting it to happen, but you're also knowing I need to get fit. And the biggest gripe I had at Kilmarnock was that the owner at the time, the chairman, had given me, I signed a new contract when I didn't need to, but he gave me assurances I could leave at a certain amount. I had thought that had been triggered, but it was all just word of mouth, and he wanted more, so it kind of pushed it on. And then, if I'm honest, the last week of the window I was less confident it would happen. I was very much of, you're getting told it's going to happen, don't worry about it, but really time was ticking on. And then when you get into the last Friday of the transfer window, it was shutting that night. I really remember going into training and kind of thinking, this isn't going to happen. To the point that went in and trained as normal, left all my stuff, because Kilmarnock, I'm pretty sure, we're playing Aberdeen the next day. I think I'm going to just be going for that game, and literally going to bed at 11 o'clock, and I got a phone call to say, right, that's it, been agreed, you need to go to the training ground to have your medical. So 11 o'clock, I jump in my car and drive up the M77 at 100 mile an hour.
I was going to say a perfectly normal speed to get to the training ground, I'm sure. And it all happened in a whirlwind, because 24 hours later, not even that, you played and made your debut at home to Gretna, in a game where Rangers won by 4-1. Andy Webster scored. A bit of a throwback for Rangers fans, because obviously he had so much trouble. How did that feel? Because it must at some point, coming on, playing at Ibrox, you grew up a Rangers fan. The day before you were saying yourself, this isn't going to happen. All of a sudden it's there, it's happened, whirlwind, and then you're playing.
Yeah, like the emotions are crazy. Like the night before, your world's ending because you're so focused, you think this is going to happen, to then think it's going to get taken away. I didn't get home till like 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning. Terrible preparation for any game. At the time, they had the 21 rule that you had the 3 under-21s. I still qualified for that. So it was left that I would meet the manager at the stadium earlier than pre-match. So I think it was about 11 o'clock. So up, ready. Didn't have a club suit, so they told me to wear a suit, and I'm wearing a nasty suit that I had. Just and see, to be honest, the excitement, the nerves were massive. The drive from my house to the stadium, I was full of anxious energy, that because you don't know. You look at Rangers, they're a club that played in Europe, they had big stars, you're looking up to these guys, and then you're part of it. So I went in and met the manager, and his kind of last comment was like, right, so have you got your boots in that? So you put you on the bench today, which I never, they had said, oh, you'll go out at half time, kind of meet the fans type thing. And I was like, no, I've not got anything. And then all of a sudden it just clicked, and I said, I've got an old pair of boots in my boot. So somebody went and got my old boots out my boot that was in a car park, and I was on the bench. Again, probably thinking, I'll maybe come on here for 10 minutes, which suited because preparation wasn't great. But then, just sorry to go back, before that, going for pre-match, again, been really nervous. I knew Boydie, knew a couple of the players from youth Scotland squads, but you're so nervous going in and meeting new guys that you don't know, you're kind of unsure of yourself. How do you act? How do you deal with this? But very quickly, I kind of just fitted into what was a really good squad at the time.
And then it came quickly because you started against Aberdeen the following week and scored. And that must have been ideal because you've got a week under your belt and then you make your proper debut, you're scoring, and it must have felt real then, because it would have been a whirlwind before against Gretna, but there, you're starting, you're in the team, you're scoring. Steven Naismith's at Rangers.
Yeah, I think I went Gretna, maybe Hearts away, never came on, or I came on for 5 minutes, and then the third game was Aberdeen at home, and I started with Big Dan Kuzan up front. But see, from that moment, from the Gretna game to then, you're not in a comfortable position. I'm turning up at training dead early, thinking, right, what do I do here? Where do I go? And you're just familiarising yourself with everything. You're then thinking, you see pros going into the gym, Davy Weir going into the gym, Hugo Eggy all going into the gym, and you're like, what are they doing? So you're kind of really unsure, just trying to get comfortable. I think over the 2 weeks, I got to that point, but I did feel really nervous in the Aberdeen game, thinking, right, this is my first start. I need to show I'm good enough. I need to show why. Because I've always had that element of I take time to settle. I'm really unsure when I go in that should I be here? Am I good enough to be here? And the best way to kind of do that, like any forward, even if you have a bad game, if you score, it masks a lot. But I thought I'd done all right in the Aberdeen game. We win. I managed to score, coming in from the left-hand side, and I kind of drag it past the defender, going into the box, and I could have squared it to somebody, but I was thinking, no, this is and then a score, which was a brilliant feeling. Something you've been in many games in the stand that you see players scoring, and then to finally do it, it's an unbelievable feeling.
Who helped you integrate into the squad?
Durante was big at the start. I had a really good relationship with Durante because he was at Kilmarnock as a coach. He was a very much a go-to person throughout that whole summer, and he kind of kept reassuring me. As much as he likes to keep you on your toes at times, he was brilliant for me. But see, that's why Walter was so good. See the players they brought in, even if you look at just that window, or the Kevin Thompson comes in January, me, Whittaker, Alan Gow, Broadfoot, you had a core group of young Scottish guys who had probably had similar paths, no been the best in their academy, no had to work hard to get where they want, and then understand what an opportunity this is. So we were on the same boat, and if they probably bounced off each other to go, no, we're in the gym here, or canteen's this way, or what do we need to do? So it probably was a group. You then had older ones like Jig was there, Boydie and Fergie. Actually, probably because I knew Boydie most, it was the four of us at the changing room that sat next to each other. And then Davy Weir I formed a really good relationship with him, but everybody was great. And then on top of that, you had the Doc, you had Davy Lavery, the masseur, Jim Stewart was the goalie coach, Kenny McDowell, who I didn't really know, but again, fitted that core group of coaching staff unbelievably. So I wouldn't say there was so much one person, but it was as if it was a journey of all these guys getting a great opportunity at what was a club that if they supported.
2007, 2008 will always be remembered. Unbelievably, today is actually 17 years since Manchester, to the very day. That run in Europe, you obviously would play in the Champions League, you made your debut at the Nou Camp, which must have been a kind of head-spinning moment as well. But that European run, and obviously your season kind of comes to a halt, which we'll talk about in a minute, but that Rangers were like a juggernaut that season. So many games, the squad, the mentality, Walter. I know that ultimately we didn't get over the line in Europe and the league, but what was it like to be part of that squad? Because that will always be remembered as and the great thing is we did kick on, but that will always be remembered as one of the great seasons, even though ultimately it didn't come off.
Yeah, it was relentless. That was the biggest thing, but it was relentless with all the games. On top of that, I certainly felt you're still getting used to all these new things, like new things being turning up at Ibrox, playing a team that's sit in and you must break them down. That was new to me from being at Kilmarnock. So you're dealing with that, going away from home, and again, the demand is you must win. I remember, and I don't even know when the game was, it was probably early on in my first season, played Inverness away, nothing each at half time. I started the game, done alright, wasn't brilliant, but wasn't bad. I was getting taken off at half time. Now, it wasn't like today where everybody's in and out the team. And I'm in the change room and the boys were going, was that bad? It took a big dent in me. Manager after the game said, just come see me Monday. I'm shiting myself all weekend thinking, and he just pulled me in and he said, baby, you weren't bad. If you were playing in Kilmarnock's game, with Kilmarnock in that game, you'd have been one of the best players on the pitch, but we must win. And I just felt the game hadn't had enough edge, that we were on the attack enough, and I had to make a change. And it gave me a new perspective. And then the European run starts, and I think the first game might have been Stuttgart at home.
2-1 win, yeah.
I didn't make that squad, which again was another wee jolt to go, I'm still going to make the squad here. Now that was unheard of for the last 18 months beforehand when I was at Kilmarnock. So you're dealing with that. And then I think I made the second game was Lyon away, made the bench, unbelievable night. And again, players just think of the matches, see for me, see the travelling, the training the day before the European game and the stadiums that you'd play at. They're getting up in the morning, arriving, going on the plane, going and training that night. Then the whole next day, what you build up to a European game like, these were all things that were brand new to me. So I was dealing with all that. Then the games come, you're like, Lyon away was unbelievable, and you're like, just watching on going, this is incredible, this atmosphere is unbelievable. And then another thing, the European music, the Champions League music, I've got a video of me at Seville at home, and the camera just pans, and just still watching it, you get goosebumps. So dealing with all that was unbelievable. And then to make your debut in the Nou Camp, where 2 months earlier, I was away to Peterhead in the League Cup with Kilmarnock, and 2 months on, you're coming out of the Nou Camp, unbelievable stadium. So that whole season, the games were so intense and but individually we were learning so much. And I think the way it ended was tough and it was so hard. You come away with a double, you're looking like the title for most of the season, and you get a European final. But probably what that done was stoke a real desire within us to go, some of these feelings are unbelievable and we wanted more. We were at a good age, but all credit needs to go to Walter for that. Building that, it wasn't just ability, it wasn't just better players, it was a real bond that we had as a group. And if they had to play, you had David Weir at the top, then in Fergie leading it, and then the older guys, and then this group of young players had talent, which we were loving every minute of life being at Rangers.
I feel like I should ask you about the end of the season, but obviously before that you have that horror moment. Rangers at this point are starting to get involved in a fixture pile-up. We go to Hampden to play St Johnstone. We were pretty poor that day, it was one each, it goes to penalties. But in the middle of that, Martin Hardy kind of, if I remember rightly, he more or less falls or stands on you. You play on, and we're all sitting in the stand going, he needs to come off straight away. You then go down, nobody realises how bad it is, but it turns out to be an injury which we're told would keep you out up to a year. It keeps you out for more or less the rest of the calendar year, but how do you deal with that?
That was a blow, because again, through that period of trying to get comfortable in your surroundings, my performances were up and down for my first season. Some really good moments, but some poor performances. And then that happens at a time, it's all just coming to the crescendo of we're all going to get the titles on the line, there's cup finals, there's European runs. So it was a massive blow, and when the initial tackle happened, there was a real pain there, but it went away quite quickly, which I hadn't really experienced any injuries. I was very much like, oh, it must be alright, because there wasn't that much pain, but from snapping your ligament, that's where the pain goes. There's nothing to be sore, but your stability's gone, and very quickly I could realise that, and I just hit the deck. and even when I went and get scans after it, speaking to the physios and stuff, it never really sank in until you're booked in to get your operation, and at that point it was a blow, and some of the toughest times in my career were in them moments for sure.
Who helped you through that?
Again, built up a good relationship with the physios, Stuart Colley in particular. He was the main physio that looked after me. Kevin Thompson had done it, and he had an understanding of it. So we bounced off each other, and subsequently later on he does it again, and it's the roles reversed.
Because I can imagine that you'd be uncertain, like, what's this pain? Is this normal?
Every time my knee didn't feel normal, I was like, oh no, what is that? But it's like anything, you do a really tough gym session, you're sore and there's aches but that's just your body recharging and replenishing itself. So I was, my first time round, very much like that. I actually remember going down to get booked in for my operation, and Big Marvin Andrews walks out, the surgeon, and as jolly and happy as he is, and he was at the point where he's like, I'm not having surgery, I'm just getting on with it. I was just in a daze. I was in a daze, like, oh my God, what's this? What's going to happen here? Am I going to be able to play again? And then you go through the rehab, and you get to the point where you hit different markers and it feels good, but then you have a hard couple of weeks and it sets you back. And I really went through. There was moments I really thought, I've signed 5 years here. I'm actually going to see my contract back out here by going out and loan to clubs, dropping back down the levels, and that's my overriding feeling going through that rehab was that.
Meanwhile, that's happening. Rangers are charging on. What was it like in the squad when you're dealing with? Because I've done nights with Chris and spoke to Chris about this and spoke to Tomo and things like that, but it seemed like we got no help towards the end of that season. You're obviously on the outskirts of that, recovering, but what was it like in that dressing room? What was the spirit like? Ultimately we did fall short, but what an incredible run to go to Fiorentina to beat Wolfsburg, who were unbelievable. Boydie jokes that Walter didn't want to go through against Panathinaikos because it's the only European game he started away from home, and Walter was quite happy to go out, but the more that went on, and then obviously you got both cups going on, the league goes to the final day. I think we're forced to play 3 games in 6 days. It was ridiculous. I remember coming home from Manchester and we played St Mirren 2 days later or something and had to go there and win 3-0. What was that like? Like, how did it feel? What was the atmosphere like in the dressing room? Because everybody must have been empty. I remember Boydie saying it was basically just home recovery games, just all the time. And obviously it's difficult for you, but what was it like to be in and around it?
Yeah, so from in and around it, and my full focus probably wasn't on that, because where I was with my injury, and you had Griggsy, myself and Burkie were 3 players that were injured that were all sitting at the side. Definitely when you think back to that time, you could feel it was relentless, and it was just survival mode. Just get through these games, do what you can. The recovery part wasn't even doable properly, because you'd travel, you would do as much recovery as you could, plus having a few injuries, so it wasn't as if the gaffer had the big squad and everybody was fit. There was enough, but there was just enough. And I think the mentality did, and that's probably what built into the longer term, it was us versus the world, and that's what it did feel like. I'm sure the Motherwell game away, how the quick turnaround, that always sticks in my mind, that how quick a turnaround, and I think going into the games you could probably see there wasn't an edge. It was just boys on the same level, the same speed if you like, the whole time. There wasn't that sharpness, and then you're really just relying on somebody doing something, which is tough. But when you're having to do that over the course of 3-4 games, 5 games in a row, there's going to be a wee chink that lets it go, and that's what did happen. I think even now the country's still trying to deal with how do we help teams that are in Europe. How do you help to get? We're still not at that point, which is mental to think 17, 18 years on.
I think it's crazy. 17 years on, Kelly are asking for help, and we're saying no, we can't do that. And that's just an example. At the start of the season, Derek was asking for help, and I think that's wrong.
It's a Scottish mentality. It was where this country is football-wise. It plays such a big part in everybody's life. But the only way we all get better is if people start doing better in Europe and things like that. So, yeah, but it definitely did feel like that back in then.
Right, some quick questions, round fire questions. That squad that year, Carlos Quella. Tell me about him quickly.
Great character, brilliant player. And I talk frequently about the foreign players that don't know anything about the Old Firm before they come. The ones that are successful are the ones that buy into it. He massively bought into it.
Daniel Cousin. He was a bit of an enigma.
Quiet, actually a nice guy,
yeah.
But wasn't he fully invested in terms of he was never going to be here for 5 years, 6 years. He was going to be here for a period of time to hopefully do well to move on.
Jean-Claude Dutchwell?
Funny guy. It was right at the end though, like you could tell, even seeing him day-to-day training and that, but what a bubbly character, brilliant, and he had some big moments in that first season. I think at the time it was a shrewd signing for what the manager was looking for.
And a cool celebration as well.
It was just like a barrow, wasn't it? But he was solid, great character, and he always had a smile on his face.
What about the unsung heroes, the guys like Broadfoot and Whitty and stuff like that?
I think that's what makes a successful squad.
I think that's what we missed out.
100%, I'd agree with that. Both Old Firm teams, mainly successful teams, if you look at them, there is a core group of people that take away for the tactical detail game to game, the core values of a club. They're the ones that drag that through. Them and the backroom staff are the most important people to build that culture. And I think we had it in abundance. We had it, and that's, you're saying Whitty, Kirk, but then Laugh, Davo, and everybody has their moment, everybody has a place within the squad. People, Laugh turned up at the flaming April, May every season, right? Was a nightmare throughout the whole season. Davo, calm as you like, but standards there. Kirk, play anywhere for you. Wits, play anywhere for you. But everybody had their bit, and nobody felt better than anybody else within the squad.
So the summer comes, there's quite a bit of change. Carlos goes to Villa, £8-9 million. Maggi Bogueira comes in. Pedro Mendes arrives.
Yep.
Kyle arrives, and there's a bit of change in the squad. So Rangers start off quite strong, but 2 months after getting to European final, Kaunas happens. That must have been, I know again you're not involved in that, but I would not have liked to have seen more of it that night.
That was one good one to miss, I think. Because I remember watching it and you're like in the house, like, oh my God, this is a disaster. Like this, from the highs of the end of the season and the brilliant season, to that is a disaster. And then just hearing the stories and the group chats and the messages for the boys about how fucking mad Walter went after it. It was a blow. It was a blow, but it probably was a wake-up call for us as well, I think. I think it was one that, not that people at the end of that season were cocky, but it had been such a frantic season, loads of young guys feeling invincible as if nothing can go wrong here. That wee bolt is a bit of a wake-up call, and that's probably what it felt like. But again, if I'm being totally honest, I never really felt 100% part of the squad there, because where I was myself, there was no I'm nearly back, I can contribute. I was a guy on the sidelines just watching helplessly, really.
Kenny arrives. It had only been a few months before Rangers Sport were singing at Hampden, you can stick a Kenny Miller up your arse. That's a true story. Walter's strength to bring him in, Kenny's strength to come in, it was a masterstroke really, because Kenny was unbelievable for Rangers in that period. That takes a wee bit of the weight, I think, off you of getting back, because similar type of positions in places. So the season rumbles on, Rangers able to beat Celtic at Parkhead. I think they come and beat us at Ibrox, and you start to get back in and amongst it. How did it feel then? Because it's taken a long time, because you were told a year, but you come back within 8 or 9 months. Mm-hmm. Were you right to come back within 8 or 9 months? Did you? I mean, how did all that feel to be back in amongst it?
The Kenny signing. So I look back, and as you said, a really bold move for the gaffer. Kenny's character tells you he's all day long going to be up for a move like that, but I probably don't see it as in, I see it as competition. And I'm like, oh no, what does that do for me? Even Laugh coming in, there's a bit of competition there going, where do I fit into this? And I come back after 8-9 months is the right time, but see what you've seen that next 6 months, there's no other way of getting that fitness, no other way of getting that match sharpness, but you need to go through a torrid time, because it's my performance. I get to the point where the crowd are on you, and I 100% can see it, knew it, understood it. People have written you off. You're done. That injury. How many players have you heard injuries stopped him for doing next one? Michael Moles. That's the biggest one. If he hadn't got injured in Bayern, how many times you heard that? I still was going through that point of questioning myself whether I could get back. So even though I come back in that season and contribute in a very small amount, small games, I was really unsure of if I was good enough to get back. So that was really tough. Really build your resilience though, because at that moment when you're feeling like that and the ball's coming to you, you take a bad touch and the crowd are like, oh fuck, naturally that happens. That happens, but how you deal with that as a player? At some points I'm like, fucking don't give me the ball here, man. I do not want the ball here, and that's where you're just at. At that moment you either fight and you go, no, I'm going to fight back here, or you go, feel sorry for yourself, and that is where you drop back down. And fortunately for me, I ride that out. My lasting memory is I ride that season out. Couldn't really tell you any really good moments or not. Probably had some. But the start of the next season was humongous for me.
Well, I've got down that Walter brought you on for the last 5 minutes in the Scottish Cup against Falkirk.
I can't even remember that.
So Walter brought you on. There's a quote somewhere from Walter at the time that talks about that's just a bit to let you know that you're in amongst it, around it. You said you didn't think of it at the time, but in that moment it must have been incredible, because you've been out for so long. That's Walter saying, listen, you're still not my boy, but you're still in this, you're still part of this. Here's a wee couple of minutes on what was a roasting hot day. I still tell Boydie that he went off at half time because he was knackered. That's obviously scores that goal, but that's a double for Rangers at a time where it's taken Walter 18 months to transform that team from Paul Le Guen to a European final team to then a double winning team. And that little bit of man management for you, because you then power on in the summer and start really strong. Yeah,
but that's why it was so special. The moments, that Inverness moment I talked about, that he reassures me in a moment that I'm low. He could also turn round. I remember actually in that, it might actually been that Falkirk final, that at half time Kenny comes in at half time, shouting and bawling, no good enough, a joke, you're playing Falkirk, cup final, do you whatever, and the manager just takes a barrage of abuse straight to Kenny and was like on him at half time, like, you're the worst, shut up, sit there and accept what I'm going to say here. And everybody's like, oh my God. So he had the both moments. He understood when, right, I'm going to give them it. And I think over the years, some brilliant moments, like the gaffer was so good at building a great environment that was fun, enjoyable. The amount of times before a game, the gaffer would wait and he'd look at Coist, he'd go, right, is everybody in? Am I going to name the team here? And he'd go, right, on you go, gaffer. And 5 minutes into the gaffer doing his team talk, somebody would walk out the toilet, or somebody would walk in the changing room for somewhere else, and the gaffer would just look at Coist, they're like, are you serious? But he just dealt with these situations brilliantly, but then we had to go hard, we go hard. So again, look, that probably is a big moment, that because when you're at a club and the resources on the bench in every game, you are sitting there in the first half if you're on the bench going, right, he might come off in the second half. The gaffer's either going to choose me or X. That's going to play in your mind. So if it got to the point, see before the final against St Mirren, before that game, clearly remember going, the gaffer's got a decision to make here. He's either going to put me on the bench or he's going to put Laugh on the bench. That's going to tell me everything I need to know here, where I'm at Rangers. I got on the bench and Laugh doesn't he? So that was a wee win for me in that competitive part that I was talking about before. And the gaffer's just really good at them moments to get the draw everything out of every player.
Season starts off well, 9-10. You were even talking about that Newcastle pre-season friendly. Kenny scores, you score the winner that day in a 2-1 win. But we start off well, you score against Falkirk on day one, and then a really big moment, or it feels like a big moment because it's an early marker. Rangers go down to 10 at Tynecastle, Tom will get sent off, which he tells me is never a sending off.
None of his were.
That was right through back Ian Black, you remember?
Aye.
Jig equalises with a really good header, and then we're counting down and you come on and score a quite wonderful goal. Jinking in, goes on the right foot and you kind of poke it, more or less. You're going to shout at me a wee bit here, aren't you? You're going to say it's a culture bending finish, but that goes in and it's a big moment for Rangers because that galvanises us and we have a really good start to that season, but you're amongst it, you're key, you're playing your part. That must feel like, right, I'm back.
Well, that pre-season, but in my mind I'm thinking this is last chance saloon. I need to contribute here or I'm done at Rangers. That's my mindset at pre-season. Now, I was a naturally fit player, but that summer I grafted all summer, strength-wise, fitness-wise, to go, I'm going to be the best. So in all the running we done, everything, I was the fittest. Always that was, and I think through pre-seasons always give you a gauge of where you're at. I played quite well in a few games, scored against Newcastle, scored at the start of the season, we go, and then there is that run, I'm sure, and I scored against Hearts against 95th minute. Both us and Celtic had won every game, won every game.
First 9 games until...
and that was a massive moment, getting that win, but all these wee details just build that sense of security that I am a big part here, I can be the match winner, and then going on to win or contribute in wins, whether it be assists or goals, built my confidence up, gets you probably a belief for the manager that he can trust you in the big moments, and that's where I felt I really kicked on and became somebody who didn't just play in the game but influenced the games, and that's what my goal was. That's what I always had in my mind.
One of the games you spoke to me about before that you'd kind of earmarked was that victory over Celtic, the 3-1 victory at Parkhead, where Pedro scores that unbelievable moment, Kenny has his double. How did that feel that day? Because that was significant.
It's probably the most comfortable I've ever felt playing at Celtic Park in terms as a team. That it was the first goal, one of the goals the goalie takes a bad clearance and it comes to me, I can take a touch.
That's the second one where Kenny, is it
our first time,
that's equaliser where Kenny volleys it in, that's right.
So that goes back to where my mindset was of I want to influence games. Start of my Rangers career, it was all about keep possession, don't give the ball away and people will look at you negatively. But then it gets to a point where like, that moment comes to me, I can either first time pass through, which is high risk, if it doesn't come off you lose possession, or take a touch. But I was confident enough just to put it right through. Kenny scores, we get a penalty on Kirk, Kenny scores a penalty.
Right in
Aye.
the top corner.
But again, think of was Jela at the pit at us at that point? I think Jelavic was there, potentially. But see when we had Jela, Kenny, myself, Laugh, Davo, it was a really good forward attacking team that all worked hard.
Jelavic didn't arrive until the third season because the boy he left and went to Middlesbrough.
Yeah, Jela came that summer.
So we were still... But
having they forward players, we felt as if we could get into... We felt we'd always create chances, and Kenny started... At that point, everything Kenny done worked. It scored goals all the time. A game against Aberdeen away, Kenny just was there to score, maybe should have scored a double, but we just felt we could score and we had carried a big threat. So that was a big moment to go, right, you just need to challenge us here.
You talked a wee bit about the Champions League, we did have that ongoing as well. That Sevilla game you mentioned, you should have had a penalty in that one.
Aye,
Shouldn't you?
raging, because that could have been a brilliant moment for me.
Yeah.
Because again, one of my other, a big moment I remember is scoring Bursaspor at home,
Yes.
first Champions League goal. But see when that goes in, man, the roof goes off and everybody's buzzing. But
Such
that,
a cool finish as well.
I just kind of anticipated Kirk heading it back inside. But we started that Seville game quite well, and in that season, the gaffer played me as a striker, which probably before that people had been like, what chance have I got up front? Wee guy up against two really experienced centre halves. But we started well, and then we get that opportunity. I actually remember playing an international not long after that, and that referee refereed the game and he apologised, saying I should have gave a penalty. But we ended up going on to get pumped 4-1, I think, in that game, maybe something like that.
Yeah, we were 4-0 down, Nacho scored in the pouring rain, and 4-0 to kind of get one.
But they were, again, that was the quality you were playing against.
They were unbelievable. Let's talk about the 2010 League Cup final. You're on the bench that day, nothing goes right, we don't perform, I think that's fair to say. Tomo gets sent off, again, same referee. Again, he says that should never have happened. It's a challenge through the back, it's rash. Danny Wilson goes 10 minutes later. Cloysty's famously in charge for the cup games, or that was always what we were kind of told. Waller comes down to the sideline, 9 men. You come on. How big was Waller that day? Because everybody talks about it, but it was almost like, right, I'll sit down, I'm doing this. In his presence, he goes to the side. With 9 men, we should never win that game because we're basically camped in a Christmas tree at the edge of the box. And before we talk about the moment of the goal, what's it like to be involved in that? Because you do train with minus men, but you're never expecting to be 9 men in a cup final at Hampden. No,
you're not. And probably a bit away for us that helped us was St Mirren probably didn't really know what to do. They didn't take real advantage of having 2 extra men. If you watch that back, they kind of were unsure of what to do. We were camped at the time. I think the manager brings me and Stevie Smith on maybe, or Steven Smith comes on after me. Probably get a bit of legs in the team. But that's why Walter was so good. You see he's reading a game, see it either before a game or at half time, how he called how the game would go. The amount of time, it was incredible the amount of times he was spot on at what would happen. And that was just another example of it. He puts me on the right hand side, knows that naturally I'll get up and down the pitch. When you're men down, you need guys that can move. And I just remember, again, St Mirren put a kind of ball into the box, but they're not really working us. We're soft, set. It drops to Davy, who again thinks he's going to be swarmed here. Has time to bring it out, opens up a bit. I make a run forward. He sees the space, puts it in the space, and before you know it, we've got a counter. And as it goes up the pitch, I actually remember for this, me driving up the pitch, but thinking to myself, we've not got much on here. And I can see Nacho on the far side. Kenny's obviously the one that's further. I think I need to slow down a wee bit here just to get more numbers in the box. So I remember slowing down a wee bit, and I hear for the crowd, I kind of, fuck. As if, what you doing? Taking our touch. By this point, Nacho and Kenny are kind of on the edge of the box, so I'm thinking, deliver it. And then, good delivery, and Kenny's just timed it perfectly. But that's an our moment. Everything Kenny does was working, and he scores an unbelievable. And see, actually, for that moment of scoring, I knew we would win the cup. I just knew we can now sit, knowing they're not 100% comfortable here. They are going to throw caution to the wind now, but we'll be good enough to defend it and probably run the clock down, and that's what ended up happening. Because it was just Weir and Jig went to the back, Davy and Jig, and just headed absolutely everything. But that's one of those moments, Stephen, where, see, when you're in the crowd, you're thinking, right, we're going to lose this cup final. And then you get that moment. I still remember that. That still makes me thinking about that, because that was unbelievable. The note, the limbs that day. But you do yourself a discredit, because it's a wonderful run, and the cross is unbelievable. And then the highs of that, the joke amongst the support, 9 men in the pigeon. Oh, it was just in front. At the moment, I didn't even notice that. But I've seen that since. But going back to also me saying I wanted to contribute, that was a massive moment for me to go, I've contributed, and us having a trophy. I've not been on the park and say, I played in that cup final. I contributed. That was massive for me. And again, that's the day that I think the gaffer chose me on the bench over Laugh, which again, massive moment for me personally, to feel as if I actually belong to be here and I'm good enough.
2 in a row sealed in the midst of quite a lot of off-field stuff. If you remember, the t-shirts famously said no dole 2 in a row. There was all that talk. There was talk about the players having to take wage deferrals, all that kind of stuff was going on. We hadn't signed a player in so long. I think we had Jerome Rothman come in on loan. That was the only guy we had in for years. And then the third season starts, and this was you were prime Steven Naismith. Injury free, a good season, contributing, and then it felt like that summer you had 15 goals, full of confidence. It felt like watching you, this was the player that we had bought to become.
Aye, I think that's fair. That season before builds a lot of or it takes away a lot of the doubt, a lot of the anxious, you need to perform here and you need to be, as I keep going on, about being somebody who's actually influenced the history books, if you like. And again, talking when I signed, I was that young guy with a bit of talent, right, I can go. At this point now, I'm that guy that's a bit more experienced, I've won trophies, I know the expectation, I understand the routine. We go and play Europe, we come back, we must win the weekend. I remember a game, was that away to Hamilton, worst game after Europe, and Big Yelovich scores an overhead kick, 1-0 we win. Nobody will remember the game because it was absolutely torrid. But that was key, that was so important. So I had an understanding of that now, know what is expected, and it was enjoyable. It was enjoyable winning. Winning that first league at Dundee United away, with games to spare, was nice because you weren't under that, which we'll come on to probably, where it goes to the last day. Like, you've got a bit of time, right? You know, if we win the day, Dundee United away, we win the league.
Hibs away, do you mean?
Sorry, no, but the first time we done it...
That was the last day of the season, Dundee United.
Was it?
Aye, that was the last day of the season because it was all the helicopter.
So it was, aye.
Hibs was
so the Hibs one just felt that you've not got that real pressure of doing to the last day. If anything, it makes it easier because you know, win the day we've won the league. So you're never going, see when you get to that point, you're never going to lose that game because it's so good. And again, Laugh scores. I remember it in terms of, it was really sunny, nice afternoon. I'm sure it was an early kick-off, which was again always brilliant because you know you win the league, straight back to Ibrox, and then you just celebrate. So amazing feeling. At that part, I felt more like I was one of the ones to then anybody coming in, lead the line for them, if you like. And we had a good squad. We had really good players, which made it enjoyable.
Boydie leaves and Yelovich arrives. But this is really Kenny Miller's time to shine because he has a 6 months. It's unbelievable. I don't know if you remember start of that season, because this was when you had the Champions League winner against Bursaspor. That was this season.
Yeah.
We go to Aberdeen, we're 2-0 down, and we
win
come
3-2.
back. We win 3-2.
I pass it to Yelovich for the winner.
Because it's the Duff
Kenny
kick,
scores to
and he played back in.
Jig plays it back over the top and I run on to it.
So Vladimir Weiss arrives. We win 3-0 at Hibs. Kenny gets a hat trick, and we're incredibly strong. Starting really well. We look strong. We look like we're going to retain the title. Everything's going well. Nikita's unbelievable. Just looks, and then he gets that horror injury. Kenny leaves at December because there's all the contract stuff. We can't offer him this, we can't do that. Money stuff is still going on in the background, and you suddenly become the main man. Yeah,
I think at that point is when I really felt we had the most players complement each other on the pitch. Like, Boydie would score at games that were really tight. Boydie would score, but Boydie was never going to do a 30-yard run back for somebody. Or Yella would, Kenny would, I would, Laugh would. You had Davo, Moedu in the middle. You just had enough. You just had guys that were doing anything for anybody just to make sure we got the results. It was really enjoyable. It was kind of Kenny and Yella up front. I've played kind of more on the left or on the right at times. But you had the freedom to move about because you had Wits coming up one side, Sasa and the other. So it was really enjoyable. Like I said, Kenny went through that phase of just scoring all the time. But the hard work before to get the chances, if you look about the team, in fact, in that Aberdeen game, there's one where I think I track back, win the ball, give it to Davo, Davo runs up, gives it inside to Kenny, Kenny scores. Like the team, the amount of team goals, it wasn't just Kenny just scoring, it just showed you where we were as a team, if they just understood each other.
You signed a new 4-year deal, and things are just great. In that run-in, you hit form because we play in Lisbon, and we come back and we'd fallen behind in the league, so it was Celtic's to win, and they're on a kind of juggernaut run, and all we can do is keep winning. In that run, we beat Motherwell 5-0 early on a Saturday morning. You score twice, the fifth one being an absolute beauty, and it's one that you would repeat a couple of months later, more or less. And it's just, you're a massive part of it. You scored a win at St Johnstone, I think, a 2-0 win during the week, which was a really workmanlike performance, but you get that vital goal, and then we find out Celtic get beat Inverness. And I remember that night because I was working, and it's one of those ones you just put to the back of your mind, and somebody takes you and goes 3-1 Inverness, and you're like, how long's on? Oh, there's 20 left. What's that like being in that situation? Because the group chats must be like...
Yeah, I think, as you said there, I did feel I could be, I think I go on to maybe one player of the year that year, but I really felt, this is opening up for me, because Kenny ends up moving. Yella's there, but Yella's still newish, and I'm like, I'm going to be the man. That opportunity opens up, and you just go, I'm taking it. And then you're in places to score goals or to make passes that are important. Felt really good. But see, one of my biggest memory at that time was the 0-0 Old Firm, Griggsy saving the penalty. Like, how big a moment's that? That's unbelievable. They win that, they win the league.
My friend said to me in the stand, he said, see if he saves this, he'll win on. And he's bang on,
100%. And it's such a big moment, so late in the game, you're like, they're just giving them a penalty, man, that's it, done.
That was never a penalty.
And
Stokes runs it.
And you just, come on, Griggsy, come on. I remember saying that on the pitch, come on, Griggsy, come on. And then it just, the euphoria, even though it's just a draw, you just know it's a big moment. And then the Celtic game midweek, I remember being at home, and like every game, you're sitting watching it going, right, come on. That, it starts off and you're like, oh, but as you say, 20 minutes to go, they're going to score, and you kind of don't look at it, and then before you know it, yes, everybody's buzzing. And then see for that moment on, see if you look at the result, we just blew everybody away.
Next game was Hearts at home on
3-0, 4-0, blew them away. Dundee United midweek, blew them away. That was the end of Walter.
4-0 and then 2-0, Walter's last game.
At Ibrox, I remember
as you said, Kyle Lafferty turns into prime.
That was just
How did that happen?
Laugh was that character. Laugh was, he was brilliant. He has his faults, but he was brilliant around the squad because he was a bit of a joker. More in the Man U game, messing about on the bus, breaks his hand, can't play. Like, that is the one extreme to the other, him being the guy that scores a winning goal. He just lived for the moments, and I think that's what he was about. But he was.
What was Walter like in the bus thing? How did he respond to that?
Well, it all happened because the gaffer got off first, goes in, and as the boys are coming off, and then you've got a decent walk to get to the changing room, the training ground. And I just remember laughing in the physio room and being like, oh, I've done it. And then I'm sure somebody had to go and tell the gaffer. And so he was in his office, so nobody really knew. And I think by that point he just was like, right, hush your playing, get on with it, and it was kind of moved on. But as soon as that result happened with Celtic, that's just a chance you need. You're never going to throw that away after that. And the results after show, we just went into games, started fast, got the crowd on side, and bang, bang, just 1-1-1. And even to the Kelly game, that shows you we knew we would win the league.
Yeah. The mentality after they slipped up was flawless. But it wasn't also flawless, it was as you said, it was convincing wins.
There was no, we never went into any game going, right, we're going to give them a sniff. There was no period in any game that you're on edge going, this is nothing each, 25 to go. Oh, we just went out, goal, chance, crowd on side. There was no chance to have a lull.
And we'd already bagged the League Cup because we beat them 2-1 in the final. Obviously, Vice for that moment to Jelovic's finish was kind of good for him coming back, because everybody felt like, because there's that way, is he going to return? How important is it when you're going for leagues and stuff that you get the first one, the League Cup, because that comes early?
Yeah.
What's that like?
I think I'm sure going into that we won the favourites.
We win.
We were, and again it was a bit of that, going back to that first season, that mentality. All right, we'll show them what we can do, and it wasn't actually. It was a nervous game. I think again, being the first trophy, it wasn't great. Davo scores with a good strike foot outside the box, but the actual game wasn't that good a game. It wasn't an enjoyable game. Then I think it's Ledley scores a header, and you're like, here we go again, man. And it's a bit on edge. The game flows out to being a draw. And
do you remember Stevie Whittaker went to centre half? Because there was injuries in the blocks he had in extra time and stuff when we were 2-1 up. It was incredible. He was brilliant that day.
Aye. Yeah, I just remember it not being that great. Not been an enjoyable game.
It wasn't.
And then with the free kick early on, because when that free kick goes, it's funny because Yella, myself and Vlad, see if you watch it back, we are all on the same page. Vlad gets the ball, I start making a run, Jelovic makes a run literally at the same time, and just fortunately plays the ball through, and then it's just a mad moment in it that it hits a post and just rolls, and again, as soon as that happens, you know, right, just see this out. We were good at that. I think at times we were really good at just, once we had it, we never let go of it at times.
Yeah, Hadji Diouf as well. What was he like?
He was mental, just mental. Like, from playing with a lot of African players, their upbringing and their culture of levels of respect from where you sit within your group, Dioufy felt as if he should gain the ultimate respect. But coming to Scotland and in that changing room with a lot of British players, like, who do you think you are? That type of attitudes there. But Dioufy was brilliant for us. Gaffer used them perfectly. Unbelievable at holding the ball, holding it off people, no giving it away. And how many times did he come on late in games and just give him the ball and you'd be up the pitch 20 yards because he just hold on to it, buy a foul. It was flashy, it was really flashy. I remember he came in once and the gaffer used to park in a space just right next to the front door. I remember coming in one day and just seeing Dioufy's car parked there, and I'm like, your beauty, how does this play out? The gaffer just parked right across him and never moved his car all day. Just at the training ground, had left Dioufy stuck at the training ground because he couldn't get his car out, which was brilliant for the gaffer. But that again is just another moment where the manager was good at bringing a culture. I remember actually going on a pre-season to Australia. I remember we went to Australia pre-season once. So gaffer said to us, work really hard, you have a night out at the end, you can do what you want, just be on the bus the next day at 4 in the afternoon.
So we played Blackburn
in AEK Athens maybe. Yeah, and another example of the gaffer, so we all have a night out, get back into the hotel at middle of the night, early hours of the morning, and we were all sharing rooms, and Davo shared with Neil Alexander at the time, right? But me and Davo come back to the hotel together. We go back to my room, and I'm like, well, I'm phoning Neely, because Neely went to his bed early. I'm like, I'm phoning Neely. So I phoned Neely, and we're all steaming and that. Like, Neely, Davo's been arrested. You're going to need to help. He's been arrested. He got caught pissing in the street, right? So I put the phone down, no thinking any more of it. Go down to breakfast the next morning, and Gaffer's at breakfast, and he's just laughing. He's like, I love that, Naisy. Just chuckling away. Neely had phoned Coisty and Kenny, and at 3 in the morning, got them out their bed, down to reception because they think Davo's been arrested. But Davo's away at his bed. So they've been up all night trying to work out where Davo is. Gaffer's like, oh, brilliant. My phone went every phoning me in the morning to get me out of my bed because I'd played the prank then. But the gaffer loved all that. But then in the serious times, he'd be serious. Again with Dioufy, he just knew how to play him. The gaffer's managed Gaza. He knows how to play everybody. he get the best out of Diouf. He was important at the time he came into the team.
Let's talk about Rugby Park. I'm smiling just talking about it because I was working that morning, so I go to my mate's house, we go to all the games together, we didn't go to Rugby Park, we didn't get a ticket. So we had a big massive litre bottle of vodka and we said don't touch it until we're settled. By 12:10 that day, that was, we were half into that. What was that like? Because that was we start quickly, Laugh scores the chip, which is what I finished at. It's 1 point. Then 2 minutes later you score, which I still consider one of your finest Rangers goals because that's a brilliant finish. And then 2 minutes later Yelovich were 3-0 up within 7 minutes. They hadn't even kicked off yet. The famous pictures of them at Parkhead getting told in the dugout, Neil Lennon getting told it's 3-0, you know, brings smiles to everyone. What was it like to be involved in that, Steve?
It's probably the perfect day. For winning a league and what comes and being on the right end of it, it's a perfect day. Early kick-off, sun was out, the game starts earlier than your opposition, but it goes back to that, we knew we were a settled team. We knew how everybody played. I played on the right that day, just playing inside. Mo and Dave over in the middle. Greg Wild had his time in the team.
He was actually really effective when he
really effective, rapid pace wise, that gave us a lot. And see, to be honest, before the game that you could just sense, I felt you could sense there was a calmness. We knew what we had to do, go and win. Rugby Park was always a brilliant pitch. Like, you weren't going to a bad, poor quality pitch. You knew it would be a good pitch, big pitch. And you could see for the start, there was a few back and forth through the ball, but then the ball drops, Davo heads on, Laugh over the top, and again, Laugh turns up, big moment. He could easily go for power, has the finesse to put it over Cammy's head, scores. And then the second one was just a great break. It was wildly effective. And I remember it coming inside, but I could have reversed it. I could have went one more to Yella, but as soon as I took my touch, I just knew I'm hitting this. Again, in the corner. And just when that one goes in, you've got that wee buffer, 2-0, so you're like, that's good. But then the third one's brilliant goal. Do you know what I mean? Brilliant position, brilliant goal. We played to come into me, go wide to Laugh, and he crossed it or something like that.
It's all one touch.
But brilliant move. And then for that moment on, it's perfect. 3-0 up, 7 minutes, sun shining, midday, you know you're going to win a league. Walter's last season, it was just perfect. And then he goes on, second half, Yella gets a goal, Laugh gets his hat-trick. So one of the most enjoyable days of football ever.
What was the celebration that day? What were you doing?
See, to be honest, I don't know. I'm sure probably at the time, like,
fingers in the ears. I
maybe done that first away to St Johnstone. Maybe I scored against St Johnstone away. It
Yes.
might have been a bit of time. Or things that used to just were like, what are you talking about? Was like when people would come out, the whole mind games type of stuff.
Yeah.
People would come out and say something, and you're like, what are you talking about? That's a lot of rubbish, and probably something along those lines. But it just became a habit. It was quite nice in the moment.
That's the ultimate high. In the background of the football club, we're taking over. Ali becomes manager. 2011-12 was an awful one for the club, but it's twofold because we start incredible. We start unbelievable. You get 8 goals in 8, including 2 in the Old Firm. And you're at this point, key player. Everything about it, you and Yell up front, everything's, from your point of view, going absolutely perfectly. Nobody knows, support-wise, what's going on. I'll ask you in a minute about the player-wise, etc. But let's talk a wee bit about the start of the season, because I remember being 15 points clear at one point. How did that feel, those 8 and 8, your 2 goals against Celtic? Let's start there. Ali says that's his pinnacle moment managing Rangers, that moment.
That season started off like a dream, but all the years ago, Walter signing their key players that were key had now flourished, became resilient Rangers players with success behind us coming into our prime. That was probably the best we all played at that time, because you had added Yella, who was really good, But the core team, the investment the 4 years before had now flourished. We were all consistent, playing at a good level, and we started that season brilliantly. I'm sure I scored at Tynecastle away in a tough game. The goals were just... I was just really comfortable in what I was expected to do. I knew where I had to be, I knew what I had to do.
But I also felt like, see, from a support-wise of watching it, it felt like you'd flourished to become that key player now.
Yeah, I think when you do score so many goals early on, and like you say, 8 and 9 or 9 goals or whatever it was, and then the first Old Firm comes, which was actually a mental Old Firm, in isolation. Like, starts off like any Old Firm, feisty, everybody's getting in about every day, and then that first goal.
That's an unreal finish. Because then Cal Wilson puts it out straight to you, and you just...
Well, it comes for a throw in, and I'm sure Witz throws it to Laugh, but Laugh's ran away out the box, and I'm a bit like, where the fuck are you going? You're a strike, get in the box, right? But he keeps hold of the ball and we retain it, but then the ball goes in the box, and where I'm thinking, Laugh, that's where you should be, it gets cleared from. It's kind of sclaff clearance. I just actually remember coming, taking the touch with my left foot, but it was on a nice motion. But see the wee bits that people just think, oh, it just takes a touch. Where you're at defines how that touch is. It's daft. It's not as easy as just taking the touch. You're just that confident that boom, the touchdown's perfect. Ball sits up nicely, right on my right foot. The angle was nice for me to get a bit of shape on it. So you're thinking brilliant, and it was a brilliant end that I could just go straight. Like, again, you don't think of these moments, you just think, oh, get a goal, what you want to just instinctively run. And see, to be honest, I enjoy that part of the ding dong between the fans and players. It's kind of gone for the game, but when you're getting abused in that, I don't mind it. As long as you can go, give a bit back, a bit of banter, that kind of way, but perfect just to go to the Celtic man. The amount of coins and that were launched were mental. It was good. I was in the bottom. Everybody was getting hammered and above me. And then to be going at half time 2-1 down, Griggsy makes a mistake.
He does. You're like,
the wee left back. I gamble a wee bit just before that. The ball maybe gets played in the middle, and I'm playing in the right. I charge to try and close it down, and it ends up going to the left back, who's got a bit of time to shoot. But I was kind of thinking, let him shoot. Kind of goes through Griggsy and in. You're like, and I actually remember at half time, I don't know who it was. It said was like, he's played such a big part for us. Talking about Griggsy over the years, big saves and that. It's new for us to pull him out. Yellow's header comes at a brilliant time. Start the set-up. Great ball in for Davo. Great header. And that's it. It was like slow motion when he heads it, because you watch it, and I think it comes kind of here and in. And I'm like watching it the whole way. Bounces down and in over the defender's head. Brilliant. 2-2. And then again, for that moment, the dynamic changes. The crowd go mental. And then the third one, I'm screaming at Laugh to give me it, and it gave me it, I'm on, but he shoots, has an argo, has about 3 shots at trying to score, and then he does.
Do you know I was incredibly comfortable at half time? It was in Sandy Jardin's front of the season ticket seat, and I said we'll win 4-2.
Oh yeah?
Incredibly comfortable.
I
just think we were, at that point, we
were, like I said, we were all quite experienced Rangers players, had went through a lot. So I think that was the time we played our best. The end of that season, at the start, that we played our best football there, because everybody we just were comfortable. We knew what we had to do. We accepted the challenge. We enjoyed it. But it was a brilliant Old Firm, that.
You had a lovely finish as well for your second, just a wee side foot, but perfectly timed, right? Healy and
Devo, Greg Wild, maybe they two bounce it a bit, maybe, I don't know, and then it goes to Devo. But as soon as it goes to Devo, that's when I know he's going to find me here, because Devo's that good. You're like, he's going to find me here, and he puts it in a great position for me. And I was actually in two minds. It was kind of at my tight. I was like, I'm going to go and header this, and then all of a sudden, last minute, I just kind of opened up my leg, and it was a brilliant first Old Firm of the season. Was always big. It was a brilliant marker to say, right, boom, this is what we're about.
Sadly, at this point, I mean, Rangers we go on a good run under Ali, but November, December time, it begins to fade. Everything then becomes apparent of what's going on off the park. How aware were you as a group of what was going on with the run of the club?
No, you never had a clue. if I'm honest, you never really had an understanding. Yes, there was the bits of we weren't really signing, we weren't spending money on players or anything like that. But
let's be honest, the signings were poor that summer.
Ortiz maybe.
What's
The boy out, the Spanish player Ortiz.
We got Bedoya, Ortiz,
Mackay.
It was that kind of Mackay. But we chased a centre half all summer to replace Davy, and we ended up with Bocanegra and Goyan. But we were chasing somebody for 6 million. And that was an early sign because that other team were saying we got no money, etc. And we didn't know at the time. So the signings didn't, at first they did, but they didn't.
But see, so when that's happening, you actually, we're not thinking about signings really. You're just thinking about, right, we're a good squad. Looking in the change room, like, but you never really have a. Who could even think that what would transpire would transpire? There was no real understanding of it at all. Because we'd started the season well, whether we signed players or not, we were strong. And you just felt it would just run on. I think there's always these moments in clubs where there's more investment, there's less investment, but you're thinking it's along those lines. But we're winning leagues, we're winning cups, we've been in the Champions League. How can there be no money? That's the kind of, as a player, that's probably what you're thinking. Like, we're successful, so success means everything's going to be all right.
Pittodrie, your last game for Rangers. I remember it because me and you'll never remember this. I wouldn't expect you. We had a lap before this. I was in the very front row where everybody was warming up, and I was there with my wife, and I was like, I can't see because Aberdeen it's got a ridiculous bit at the front, and I was like, I can't see a thing. I can barely see Steven Naismith. And you were turning around and laughing and talking to me at the time, and that was before that. And I didn't know at the time, obviously, how that game would go. Rangers would win it 2-1. Ricky Foster scored. I think Alan McGregor kind of threw that one in as well. They'll not thank me for saying that. But little did we know that during that game, you would go down more or less right in front of us, and that would be the end of your Rangers career. The ACL goes again. Did you know at that time, having experienced it, oh, this is bad?
It's quite similar to my first one in that I went down. I actually have a really bad challenge on the boy at Milton or something at Aberdeen. I think Davo plays a pass and it's just to the side of me, so I'm trying to rectify it and I put my leg out, but I'm late and I can't. He's away with the ball and I actually catch him ankle high really bad, but my studs get stuck in his sock, so it kind of jarred my knee. Again, there was a bit of pain, but not overly sore. Looking back, you've snapped my ACL, but I was like, no, it's fine, I'll go back on. Very similar. I remember trying to receive that ball and just hitting the deck, but at the time I'm like, who the fuck's just tackled me? That's a shocker. Like, I felt as if somebody came right through the back of me. And then I kind of looked about and there was nobody there, and I kind of knew at that point, I really knew it was bad. From my experience in my first one, I knew that was it, and that was devastating because of the way I started the season. As you'd said, you'd built your career through the years of being better, getting a bad injury, being better, becoming important, feeling invincible, and it just all been taken away, which was really tough.
You're dealing with all this. February comes. The club, I almost felt like from a supporters club, from a sports point of view, inevitably go into administration, because this has now been going on for 4 or 5 weeks. That there was every day you woke up, you checked the forums, you checked, and it's today's the day. It finally happens. What was that like to deal with as a squad? Because obviously Ali spoke about it a wee bit, but there was that kind of blasé attitude from the owners at the time, and we'll just get through it and all that. What was it like as a squad to be dealing with that?
It was actually surreal. See, up until like weeks before, there wasn't any chat of it within the squad. It wasn't as if, oh, this is a realistic I remember being in the physio room once, and I think it was Durante came in and said, we're actually going to get into administration here. And everybody's like, what? But then the first kind of chats were, oh, we're just going in, everybody knows what's happening, it's just a process, we need to do it. But so again, you actually hang on to that, and you're a bit like, all right, okay, well, they don't seem to think anything's going to really come of it. It's just the process that has to go through to get us to the other side. Alright, not really knowing loads about business or that, you're very much like, alright. So even at that point, there wasn't any meeting we had was, this is part of the plan, we know what we're doing, it's just the next step in the process. And that, any meeting we had with anybody from the club side or the administrator side, it was all, that's the way it should going to be. And then as the weeks went on, that's when things started to kind of appear different.
Yeah, it's difficult not to say from a supporter's point of view and be rash about it and say the whole thing was a sham. But looking back on it, you'll not feel that, you've just explained that being in, but a takeover as such does happen. And then there becomes a difficulty because we get to the season end. I remember the last day of the season, I was at the game we beat St Johnstone 4-0. I think McCulloch and Aluko might have got a hat trick, and then I remember going out that day thinking, this might be the last time that I see that group of players, that squad, McCoy's. Nobody knew what was going on. And then obviously things happen. Can you talk us through what was going on for the players at this point?
So I think when the administration stuff happens, the first kind of things that you start to go, well, it's all part of the plan, this is what we're doing, it's just all totally normal. And then as the weeks go on, there's more meetings, there's more getting asked. And I think the first step is that all the players, I remember the manager having a meeting with the more senior group, that saying, hey, the administrators are saying there needs to be pay cuts taken. So everybody was on board at that point, saying, no, aye, that's all right. And the manager was like, aye, so 70%. So everybody was like, all right, so we'll take a 30% pay cut to the end of the season. It moves on, it helps. So everybody's on board and they say, like, no, a 70% pay cut. That's the first real time everybody's like, hold on a minute, this is part of the process. This is just, you're telling us this is just a formality. We need to, but now we're taking a pay cut, which everybody agrees to. There's no resistance because everybody thinks, right, okay, it's part of the plan. There's no real danger here. So everybody agrees to that, but so many things went on that were, the little you know about business were really no real business like. This is a bit weird that this is how, in a room, just sign this and we'll move on, that kind of shady kind of way, which I must say that the senior players didn't really, they started to question it, whether it be Jig, Griggsy, myself, Davo, we started to ask a bit more questions at that point, going, well, this is, how can this be part of the plan that all of a sudden there's pay cuts and there's just quickly do it now and don't let anybody see it type stuff, which was very uncomfortable.
Difficult moment now to discuss, you leaving Rangers. Why did you come to the decision to leave Rangers?
Probably a combination of the previous 6 months. From the administration point on, the way it was dealt with wasn't normal, wasn't right, didn't feel right. Loads of pressure put on the players from administrators, the board, people above, and you're like, this isn't normal, we're just footballers here, right? This isn't normal. As it goes on, you see the people getting involved, and then ultimately, this is the hardest thing I've ever done in football at the time, because life was great for me. 6 months earlier, flying, playing well, scoring, winning trophies every year. But you're in the prime of your career, and to then go to the point of you're going in the bottom division, you're effectively going to lose your prime years, your international career, and at that point you're just starting out. I signed, you talked about me signing a new contract with Rangers. It was against my best interest to sign a new deal there. See, if I wait a year, I'm in my last year of my contract, fly in, the club have then got a decision, but I done it because I thought, I want to stay here. I'm not asking, I was probably nowhere near the highest earner, but I done it because I thought this is the this is where I'm going to be. I'm going to be here forever. But then to go through all that at that point and really go, well, the next 4 years, I'm probably not going to get the salary I'm on. The best years of my career, and I've said repeatedly through my whole career, the biggest driver I had in my career, and not in a, it's going to sound really brutal, but was money. I never had any other skills. I was thinking to myself, I want to be as successful as I can. I need to make as much money as I can, that when I retire, I'm not reliant on having to get a job. That was my soul from when I was a kid to going through. That was my biggest thing. And partly going to look unsure of what is it going to look like after. And then when the people come into the club and it's about, right, we need you to sign this, to trust us, we're going to do this and this. It got to the point where so many things had happened that you're like, I really can't trust these people. And see, when you look back in hindsight, every one of the people that went into that club only seen it as, this is a great chance to make a fortune. And ultimately probably did.
Yeah, you have that press conference, which will, in some eyes, is really difficult to deal with. I think everybody could understand you going, and I don't think there was any resentment from any of us with regards to how you went, but that was really difficult to deal with. Looking back on it now, do you not regret making the move? Because I understand what you said, I think that's fair, and I don't begrudge anybody in that situation to go, no, I've got things to think about, I've got moves to make. Do you regret how it happened?
Looking back on it 100%, you look at it and go, that was wrong. What leads you to do it is, again, the 6 months before, and the amount of stuff the amount of times I looked at a paper and I was the one that was the problem in that 6 months before, from whether it be the administrators, whether it be Charles Green and guys like that, constantly pressuring us to suit their narrative, to suit their needs, was relentless. Internally, oh, you're the one that's stopping everybody, threatening you, saying, by the way, see if you don't sign, we're going to tell everybody they're done, and we're only going to keep Griegsy, myself, Whitty, Davo. That was the 4 assets at the club. So everything revolved around us with them, basically, was saying, we're going to keep using bin everybody. Everybody's going to just get released, lose their contracts, lose that. Staff are going to get made redundant and lose their jobs. They constantly push that on us all the time. So it gets to the point where you feel as if, and probably this wasn't the case externally, but you feel as if we're getting made out to be the bad guys here all the time. With all of that, the takeover's not happening, the whatever it may be was always put on us all the time. And that, at that point you feel, I need to speak up here and say, this isn't us. We've took a pay cut. We've managed to secure nobody losing their jobs. We want the best for the club. And that's what leads you to get to that point. In hindsight, you look back, it was the wrong thing to do.
Do you understand how hurt the supporters were? And you've apologised for this before, about the wording, I suppose, of that press conference. I'm not sitting here asking you for anything, but what would you say to the supporters about that now?
I think all the wording part of it, you're a young guy that's not got a clue. There's a business and there's a football team that are two different things. You're being told that certain parts of things you can say, you can't say. So you're kind of going into that under pressure. As in Scotland with the media, everything's going to be taken from opposition fans or whatever and made to suit everybody's narrative. That's what goes on. I think for me, it's sad that you have so many good some of the best memories you have in your career and most successful in terms of winning trophies is tainted by the way it ended. And that is really sad, because you have all these brilliant memories, great people, and you've experienced a load of my mates are Rangers fans, and some of the moments and memories that you've shared and they've been involved in themselves that you've been part of, is such a big thing, but then it's looked on differently now because of the way it ended.
Let's leave that there. I don't. Is there much more to say? Do you have anything else you want to say about it?
No,
because it's a horrible time
it's
for
happened.
everybody, and it's happened, and you weren't the only one that was kind of. I think from a supporter's point of view, we felt like it was everybody was on us, and when you're relying on your heroes as such, and you weren't the only one, but there was stuff said and manipulated in the press and all that. I just felt like we were getting kicked all the time. Does that make sense?
No, 100%. That, and it probably was the case to have Rangers demoted to the lowest league in the country speaks volumes of where it was at. I think everything that could, the uncertainty that comes, all football fans want is a team that can go on the pitch, be successful, and feel that they're invested in something that is a big part of everybody's lives. That is it. But when other people and other things get brought into play that changes that, it makes it really hard to deal with. This all happened. Everybody that left Rangers, for whatever reason, had their own reasons for doing it. But doesn't mean that they didn't want the best for the club. Griggsy leaving, Davo, fortunately they've managed to go back and win a trophy and help win that trophy, which is massive. But at the time they were saying it was a negative against them leaving. But it was that for anybody that left, it was one of the hardest things they will 100% have done in their life.
Did you ever have the chance to go back? It was talked about a lot.
There was different chats and that, but see with any football transfer, there's a million conversations go on before you're actually at a point where you go, right, this could happen. So at certain points there was conversations had.
Did you want
to? To manage to play for Rangers again, that would have been amazing to experience that playing at Ibrox. I think it would have been difficult. And I think expectation at that time when you're going into a team that, I think from looking back from then till now, the amount of mistakes that have been made and things that have happened,
running the club, yeah, 100%.
Make it so difficult that you probably aren't part of a success if you go back, if that makes sense. It's these things in life happen, and you need to move on.
Would you have loved to have a kind of renaissance like Griggsy and Davo and that?
I remember watching it at the time and been delighted for them, because what we had first time round was unbelievable. And I thought at the time they go back, that was the only way that there was ever going to be a challenge. I felt to get that quality of player back for nothing, and who I know 100% will have compromised to go back. That was only ever going to be the way that you can manage to make it happen. And unfortunately it did happen, and I was delighted for them.
Right, let's move away from this. As we finish, we've talked about him a wee bit. Tell me about Waller. Because it feels like we should, because we've talked about him a wee bit, it feels like we should have a kind of moment to talk about Waller, because he was special. I think, see, you ask anybody, like you've just done there, what about Waller? A smile just comes over everybody's face, because he was knowledgeable. He was a warm, see if you break everything, he was a warm person. He was a receptive person. He had a presence. He'd walk in the gym, or he'd walk anywhere in the changing rooms or anywhere, and you're like, oh, there's a gaffer. But he had a warmth. I remember when I was injured, I was first in every day I was injured, and the gaffer would get in the gym and go on the cross trainer, right? So for about 7:30, he's on the cross trainer, some sort of old rock and roll music blaring in the gym, right? And I'd get into the gym to start my work, and I'd probably go into the physios and be like, what about his music, man, right? I'm in the gym. And one day he came up to me, he was like, you know, like my music? Put yours on then. And I was like, no, I'm alright. Right, but he just knew how to be in every situation. Tactically, he was unbelievable. When he needed to give somebody a jolt, he would. When he needed to give somebody confidence, he would. He was a great laugh. Every trophy we win, you go back to Ibrox and you have a party with all the people you've grafted with, and the gaffer was in the middle of it all the time. With a drink, getting photos. He would bring his family into that
that situation, and it all just felt like one big family. And it was just it was amazing. He was an amazing human being, manager, person. Like, everything about him was class.
Did you ever get a rollicking? Or the stare? Or the...
I've probably over the time, but I think because my nature of working hard in that, I think he would appreciated that. I don't think there's any moments that I can feel that he slaughtered me individually. I've been part of a few where the teams got at a certain point, but I can't remember if any I was in personally. The days you had to go and see him in the morning were tough, because you're like, fucking hate when you go and see a manager, man. And you're sitting there trying to can't eat your breakfast because you know you've got to go and see him.
What about Coisty? Because he comes in and he takes over in what's his dream job and his dream moment. He's primed for this, and he gets dealt the worst hand possible. He then has to obviously deal with absolutely everything, and then take us back, and he gets, to be quite honest, he gets the shitty end of the stick, completely Coisty in what was his dream job. And I don't like to think about, because some people judge him for that and they forget about everything else. And what was he like in those moments? And
I think the team below the manager was the best you could get. I think the manager was shrewd, clever, getting Coisty, Kenny McDowell and Durante. Like, and the gaffer hadn't worked with Kenny McDowell beforehand, because I used to ask him, how do you... I just got a phone call once and Walter was saying, do you want to be part of my staff? And Kenny was a Rangers fan. So being at Celtic, there was a bit of controversy him coming in, but having that group of staff, they were brilliant. Coisty was an amazing number 2. And I think he'd clearly say as well, he wasn't the best manager. But on top of that, being a young man, in terms of being manager, he was a young and inexperienced manager. To follow one of the best in the game is a tough task. To have everything else on top made it worse. And I think now you see Coisty know being a manager tells you everything you need to know, that he probably wasn't his most comfortable or the best role he'd been in. But as a number 2, he was excellent. Him, Durante and Kenny were brilliant support staff, because they put an arm around you, they were really involved with the squad. So that bridge was there. Kenny took most of the training, Coisty joined in a lot of the training. The gaffer would just stand and watch. So he was the one that was in the side just taking it all in. They could have a laugh and a joke and be part of it. They could also boost you when you needed to. And they could also throw you a wee warning when something bad was going to come your way. So that dynamic was perfect. I think that was a perfect role for Coisty.
Okay, quick fire moments as we round this up. Favourite Rangers goal?
Probably the Old Firm one. The first one of the Old Firm, the 2 I scored in the Old Firm. Although I scored the 95 5th minute winner against Hearts was a good one.
If I told you I thought your best finish was the Motherwell 5-0 game, would you agree? Because that was outstanding.
The only thing that's bad for that is the camera angle's rubbish, because the light in the stadium. So see, when I hit it, you don't really see it, but brilliant finish in terms of right in the top corner. But that's just a strike. I think there's the Hearts one away. I beat a man, I drop a shoulder and I score. How important that goal was. The Old Firm one, to take that good touch to play, I think they're better than that one.
Favourite Rangers moment?
Kilmarnock away, they winning the league. Special day, perfect day.
Favourite teammate?
Oh, that's a hard one. That's too hard, man. I idolised Fergie before I went, so to play with him was good, as much as he was tough. A room with Whitty, a room with Burkie.
He was great.
But we had a great squad. Carlos was my relationship that I built with Davy Weir, who's 10 years older than me. Like, the things you have in common. So there's too many to say. Great moments with a great group of guys.
Best in the dressing room?
Best. Davy Weir.
Okay, since you said it, pest in the dressing room?
Laugh.
But
there was a great carry on all the time. Laugh came in once with a pair of bright orange trainers, so we got the whole squad to sign them, and then glued them to the floor next to his space. But they were like £400-500 pair of trainers. He was raging, but all that kind of banter went on all the time. And do you know who was probably another one that was the best? Jimmy Bell. Unbelievable guy. To steeped in Rangers and just let every player know it. Would not let a player, never mattered who a player was. I used to love watching Ronald de Boer, right? So he was 14. So I told Jimmy this. He started putting RDB in all my stuff, whether it was my flip-flops, my boots, my gear. He's like, you've got a long way to go until you're him. And he used to say it to me all the time, but it was just that connection that you have. What a person to have in a club.
Do you know, I was lucky enough to be shown around the training ground, and Jimmy was in his room when Paul Murray took us in, and Jimmy seen my phone with my dog, and that was him.
Ah, he loved his dogs.
Loved dog, and I was like, he's like, come on, I'll show you, and he showed me, and I got to spend a couple of minutes with him, and he didn't know me from Adam, and it's not like we suddenly became, but at Pittodrie, we beat Aberdeen 4-2 a couple of years ago, and Defoe scored the fourth, and I was waiting for Chris Jack outside the main doors, and Jimmy came out, and Jimmy remembered.
Aye,
unbelievable.
He was such a good character.
He was in my room a couple of years ago, and I was in your room a couple of years ago.
But see when he got a sense that he didn't think he was really invested, he would let them know. But players, I mean, if he felt a player was just in to be, it was just a job to them, it was just part of getting a good wage, playing at a good club, he would let them know. And that's what I loved about his honesty all the way through, was brilliant.
Boydie tells a funny story that because Purcell had the 9, he went in and asked him, and Jimmy's like, nah, you're not getting it, you're not a big enough name, and Boydie was like, well actually, like, Boyd's got the same letters as Purcell, so it'll be fine, and Jimmy was just like, fuck it, so, and Boydie went back on first day of training, and he had 9, and that's the way it was, and stuff like that.
We played AC Milan in a friendly. Do you remember it? 2009 maybe?
We've played them a few times. I always get confused. I remember we played them.
But this team had like Inzaghi, Beckham, Kaká, Seedorf, and everybody.
Yes.
Just a friendly. 2-2 I think. Aye.
Yeah, right.
So the gaffer said you're only playing to half time. To me, we're walking off and Pirlo and me are the last players off. So I'm like, I'm coming off. Friendly. Oh, swap tops. I swapped tops. So going to the dressing room and Walter's like, right, I'm going to give you 10 more minutes. So I'm like, right, okay, Jimmy, I need a new shirt. I swapped it. He's like, I'm not giving you one. So for the full half time, he's like, I'm not giving you a new shirt. You're going to need to go back through and ask for your top back. Right, and I'm sweating like, oh no, the gaffer's going to know I've changed my top at half time, what's it going to think? He just left me at the very last moment, he just threw me a new jersey. But aye, what a man.
Final question, I suppose, how would you sum up your Rangers career in terms of, final Rangers question, I've got one more to ask you, you'll like this one maybe, but in terms of your Rangers career, what would you say about it?
It was successful. I think that for me, that's any player going to Rangers, you're defined by how much success you have and trophies and what you did. I grew up watching 9 in a row team and constant winning. And it's not even so much the playing well, it's in the tough moments somebody coming up with the goods that get you what you need. So I've always seen it that way, and I think we were successful. That's the way I've seen it. The way it ended was really sad. I don't think anybody involved in that situation ever wanted that situation to happen. But in the 4 years before, or the 3.5 years before, we were a good team, we were successful, and I think it showed that we cared.
One last question for me, because I remember being in the pub watching this unfold, that hat-trick against Chelsea for Everton. How good was that? I always wanted to ask you about this, because Chelsea were flying. It's like Chelsea peak powers, and there's Everton and Steven Naismith.
Just see, to be honest, playing in that league against that type of player,
must have been
I've grown up, never been the best in the academy. I'll go for being a young prospect at Rangers, Kilmarnock, doing well, to being a bigger national, I feel like, or country-wide prospect, to going to Rangers, to starting there, to getting to that level, but then to go down, you're playing against most of the best players in the world. I always just thought to myself, I'm just going to work harder than all them. What will happen will happen. And it turned out to be quite good. I think I was a sub that day and I come on after 9 minutes, get my first goal, good bit of movement header, second one on my left foot, get a bit of space, and I go, do you know what, I'm going to hit this bottom corner, and then to finish it off with it, it's mental. Looking back at the time, I just thought, that mentality I talked about being at Rangers, done that, move on, right, what's next? It's when you retire and you look back and go, bloody hell, I scored a hat-trick. And then every so often somebody will score a hat-trick and a list of hat-tricks comes up and your name's on it. Like, now my kid's seeing it and going, how are you there? That type of thing. So, it was a good memory.
I always remember watching that and just being, that's our boy, like, that's incredible kind of thing. So for you to go down there and do that, I've always wanted to ask you about your hat-trick against Chelsea, but a little bit of a curveball at the end of what's been an amazing interview, Stephen. Thanks for your time. Remember we said this was 45 minutes?
Aye, how long?
An hour and 35.
Wow.
It shows you've done it. I really appreciate it.
Aye, no problem at all.
Four lads, honestly. It's I know it can be easy to talk about certain things, so I really appreciate your honesty in coming on.
No problem at all. Enjoyed it.
Four Lads podcast is sponsored by Rhino Express, Clyde Joinery, Athol Industrial Solutions Limited and CSD Air Conditioning, along with Art of Gold. Thank you for listening or watching the podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show.